Ever notice how people dance around the real issues behind a nasty divorce? Like everyone sees it, right? But nobody wants to talk about it. It's like this big silent elephant in the room. Well, today we're calling out that elephant.
It's about time, really.
We're diving deep into this tough topic. Substance abuse and divorce.
Yeah, it's something that needs to be talked about more.
Hmm.
Because substance abuse, it doesn't just hurt the person with the addiction, it impacts everyone around them,
Hmm.
especially their spouse. And it's not just the emotional stuff either. The legal battles, the financial struggles. It can be a real mess.
And way more common than you might think. I mean, the divorce rate in the US is already kind of scary, right? 40,
Yes.
50%, even higher for second or third marriages. And you know what plays a big role in a lot of those cases? Substance abuse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This isn't just something you see on TV. This is real life, happening in families everywhere, from every
Right,
background.
exactly. It doesn't discriminate.
And it's not just alcohol either, so that's often the first thing people think of. We're talking about the whole spectrum here. Opioids, stimulants, even stuff you might not think about right away, like inhalants.
So we've established this is a big problem. But how does addiction actually, you know, turn a marriage into a war zone?
Well, addiction changes people. It messes with their personality, how they act. Imagine living with someone and their moods are totally unpredictable. One minute they're great, next minute they're angry or withdrawn.
Yeah, like you're walking on eggshells all the time, never knowing who you're going to get.
Exactly. That constant tension, that feeling of not being able to trust your own partner,
Hmm.
it eats away at the foundation of a relationship.
Yeah.
And then there's the financial strain. Addiction is expensive.
Yeah.
I'm talking people spending half their income, sometimes more, just to fuel their habit.
It's just heartbreaking. And I think it goes beyond the money itself, you know? It's the broken promises, the lying, constantly worrying about money, if there's even going to be enough.
It's a lot for anyone to handle. And sadly, the research shows there's often a link between substance abuse and domestic violence, too. So now you've got emotional turmoil, money problems, and sometimes even physical danger. It's no wonder so many marriages just fall apart under that kind of pressure. It's a really tough situation. And unfortunately, a lot of times that turmoil spills over into the legal system. Once a couple decides to get divorced, if one of them is struggling with addiction, it casts a huge shadow over the whole process, especially when there are kids involved.
Speaking of legal battles, how does addiction complicate things when it comes to custody arrangements?
Well, the courts always have to put the child's well-being first, which means a lot of times they're going to favor the parent who is sober when making custody decisions. They want to make sure the child has a stable, safe environment.
That makes sense. But what about the parent with the addiction? Do they just lose all contact?
Not necessarily. Courts can order something called supervised visitation. So the parent can still see their kid, but it has to be under the supervision of someone appointed by the court. That way there can still be some contact, but the child's safety is the top priority. Drug testing is also pretty standard in these situations to make sure the child is protected.
So there are definitely measures in place, but it's still like an uphill battle. And I imagine addiction could also affect things like alimony payments, right?
Oh, absolutely. The courts are going to look at the financial impact of the addiction, especially if it's led to things like irresponsible spending, lost income, that kind of thing. It's possible the alimony payments will be higher for the spouse who wasn't using substances just to help them recover from those financial hits. Addiction can really have this ripple effect on a family's finances for years, sometimes even generations.
Wow. That's a tough pill to swallow. We've been using the terms substance abuse and addiction kind of interchangeably, but there is a difference between the two, right?
A huge difference. It's like, think about it this way. Having a couple beers after work sometimes, that's one thing. But building your entire life around when you can have your next drink, that's something else entirely.
Hmm.
Substance abuse, it's about using in a way that causes harm, yeah. But addiction, or what doctors call substance use disorder, it goes way deeper. It takes over.
So it's not just about willpower then. There are actual physical changes happening in the brain, right?
You got it. It actually rewires the brain, makes it really hard to just stop. That's why it's so important to think of addiction like a disease, something that needs treatment, not just a personal failing.
Yeah.
The source mentioned something about impulse control, how addiction can really mess that up.
Yeah, like your brain's reward system gets hijacked or something, right?
Yeah.
Making it harder to resist those urges.
Exactly. And when you're talking about recovery, well, that's where things start to look a little brighter. Let's talk about some of the options people have. There's actually a lot out there.
Okay, so good news first. What kind of treatments are available?
The good news is there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Treatment, It's got to be tailored to the individual. But it often starts with medical detox. This is especially important for things like opioids and alcohol, where quitting cold turkey can be really dangerous.
Yeah, detox. That's usually the part people are most scared of, right? The withdrawal, the cravings.
Oh, it's definitely tough, no question. But that's why medical detox is so important. It's a safe, controlled environment where they can manage those symptoms, you know. Plus, doctors can prescribe medication to help with the cravings and discomfort. So it's about getting through those first few days as safely and comfortably as possible.
So it's like having a safety net while your body kind of resets.
Exactly.
But then what? After detox, what does the road to recovery actually look like?
Well, that's where the real work starts. It's about figuring out what led to the addiction in the first place, addressing those root causes. And that's where therapy comes in. Sometimes it means inpatient treatment, like going to rehab. That provides this really immersive 24/7 support system that some people need, especially early on.
I imagine it's like hitting the pause button on your life for a bit,
Yeah.
right? And just focusing all your energy on healing and rebuilding. But not everyone has that luxury. What about people who can't just put everything on hold?
Totally get that. That's where outpatient treatment can be a good option. You're still getting that essential therapy and support, but you have the flexibility to keep working, going to school, taking care of family stuff.
Yeah.
And there's support groups too, like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous.
Yeah, those 12-step programs.
Exactly. Being around other people who've been through it, who get it. That sense of community can be incredibly powerful. You don't have to go through this alone. The research also talked about something called medication-assisted treatment.
Yeah, I was curious about that. What is that exactly?
So MNIT, that's using medication along with counseling and therapy to help manage addiction over the long term. It's really effective for opioid addiction, though it can be used for other substances too.
So it's kind of like an extra layer of support, something to help manage the cravings, make it less likely someone will relapse while they're working on the other stuff, like the behaviors and emotions that are driving the addiction.
Exactly. It's all about giving people as much support as possible to make a lasting recovery. And there's this type of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short. It's really helpful. Basically, it teaches people to recognize the thought patterns of behaviors that lead to using, and then most importantly, how to change them.
It's like rewiring your brain, right? So you can deal with stress and triggers in a healthy way without needing drugs or alcohol.
You got it. Empowering people to take control of their lives again. And you know the best part, recovery, it's not just about the person using substances. Their whole family heals.
There's that saying, right? When one person gets sober, the whole family does.
100%. But sometimes that journey to healing, it starts with a really difficult conversation.
So let's say someone's listening to this right now and they're like, whoa, this hits close to home. What's the first step? How do you even start dealing with something this heavy?
Honestly,
Yeah.
just admitting there's a problem, that's huge.
Yeah, that's always the toughest part, isn't it?
It is. It's way easier to just brush things under the rug, you know, especially when it's someone you love. You tell yourself it's not that bad or they'll snap out of it, but you got to face reality. As painful as it might be, that's the only way to start healing.
It's like finally going to the doctor after you've been ignoring a health problem for like way too long. Taking that first step is scary, but it's also a relief in a way.
For sure.
Okay, but where do you even go from there?
Well, remember that National Domestic Violence Hotline we mentioned?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
They're not just for physical abuse, you know? They can help with any kind of relationship where substance abuse is causing harm. They can connect you with resources in your area, like support groups, or even legal help if you need it.
It's good to remember you don't have to figure this out all on your own. There are people out there who get it, who can help.
Right. And there are other options, too. Couples counseling can be a game changer for some people. It gives you a safe space to talk things out, work through the issues, maybe start rebuilding trust.
It's about communicating, right?
Exactly. And for those whose loved ones are struggling, there are support groups specifically for them, like Al-Anon.
Oh, right, like a counterpart to AA.
Yep. It's all about realizing you're not alone in this. Other people have walked in your shoes, they get what you're going through. And sometimes, as hard as it is to hear, the best thing might be to just step away from the relationship for a while.
You mean like a separation?
Yeah. And it's not about giving up on the person. It's about creating a safe and healthy environment for everyone involved. Sometimes you need that distance to heal, to grow.
It's a good reminder that sometimes love means setting boundaries, even if it means taking a break.
Absolutely. But even then, there's always hope. Addiction doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be a really rough chapter, yeah, but it doesn't define the whole book. With the right support, with the courage to ask for help, with a whole lot of love and understanding, people can and do recover from this. And they rebuild their lives, often stronger than before.
That's what it's all about, right? That hope, that resilience. Well, if there's one thing I want listeners to take away from this deep dive, it's this. You are not alone. This is a tough topic, but it's one that touches so many lives, more than people realize. But with understanding, with compassion, with the willingness to reach out for support, healing is possible. There is hope for a brighter future for everyone involved. And remember, asking for help, that's not weakness, that's strength.